My name's Steve Young. I'm a director with Winning Pitch, and I'll be delivering today's webinar for you. Welcome to this webinar program that's provided by Humber Access to Finance program. Just so that you know a little bit about the program, this is the webinar. We deliver a lot of the webinars on this, and today's webinar is on about a clear growth story, how to develop and present your strategy in a compelling way that investors love. And today is 2 o'clock and 3:30, so let's make a start. We've got, as part of the Humber Access to Finance program, you may or may not be aware, but there's also the Finance for Growth scheme. So that allows one-to-one advice and grants and availability, and there's also a workshop program to go with that as well. So lots of support to help you implement and put in practice, hopefully, some of the tools and techniques you'll learn today. A bit of housekeeping, first of all. If possible, if you want to join the meeting with video, that's great. If you could also maybe mute your microphones if you're not speaking. We might ask you to speak and with questions, that's absolutely fine. So you'll obviously unmute then. But for when the presentation's on, if you can keep them muted, that'd be great. We will be circulating a copy of the slide deck. So no need to make too many notes. But I should say now, it will be handy if you had a piece of paper and some notepad and a pen with you, because we have got a number of exercises that I'd like you to take part in. So, and you'll need a piece of paper and a pen for that one, just to get involved and start to, we only learn through doing, don't we? So it's always good to sort of put these in practice that way. And at the end of the presentation, you'll be sent a sign-in sheet and a feedback sheet, such that we can get some feedback on how today's gone and what else we can do to support you. So let's make a start then. So what is today and this afternoon about? Growth story. Obviously, from the people that have joined on the program and on the webinar, you guys, I guess, understand what a growth story is. It's really an explanation of how your organization and how you as the leader is going to take that business and grow that business and make it a success. And it's the story behind that is the way that we do it. We know it's important because, well, people invest in people, not businesses. So if a particular investor or maybe even a member of your team is listening to your growth story about how we're going to take the business stratospheric, then they're as much evaluating you as they are the business. In fact, more than the business. So people invest in people, not the business. And I guess just to sort of kick you off with a little story, my experience of a growth story, our organisation, Winning Pitch, of which I'm a director of, we raised £2.5 million a number of years ago. And my experience of the growth story was one of the VCs, just on the verge of making the decision as to whether they were going to invest in us or not, grabbed the directors in for a final meeting one by one. And this particular venture capital chap grabbed me into a meeting room and sat me down and said, okay, tell me your growth story for this business, because I'm not really investing in the business. I'm investing in you, Steve, and you are the managers that are going to make this happen. So I need to know that you know the growth story and how much you believe in it. So I told him the growth story, which I already practiced through spreadsheets and through PowerPoints, etc. Told him how we're going to grow, and we had the hockey stick curve, etc., and what we're going to spend the money on, and a fantastically well-rehearsed speech. And at the end of it, the VC looked me in the eye and said, "Do you really think you're going to deliver on this growth?" And I said, "I do." He said, "Do you think you can really implement it?" And I said, "I do." And he said, "Oh, I'm really pleased you said that, Steve, because what we're going to write into the documents is the fact that if you as a business don't deliver on this growth, then we've got the option not to pay you a year's salary the following year. Now, Steve, do you believe that you're going to achieve this strategy?" Which was, now I ended up finding out that ultimately he was just playing games, testing me out on the growth story, not just what the growth story said, but whether I believed in it and whether I thought it was possible. I did end up signing his document to say that they could take a year's salary off me if we didn't achieve the growth. And the spoiler alert is the fact we didn't achieve the growth. We were just short of it, but they didn't take the salary off me. So interesting. But it shows, the growth story shows up at different stages in different places. But what we need to know, obviously, is we need a growth story that's clear, that we can deliver with confidence and with conviction, particularly in situations like that. So we're talking about clarity. We're talking about, do you know the numbers behind it? Do you know the markets? Do you know the next level of sort of granularity, if you like? Confidence, what we're talking about there is really about, do you give off a feeling when you're telling the growth story that you really are going to be able to do it? And conviction, are you really committed to making it happen? Or is this a bit of a hallucination rather than a growth story? And as I say, when you're telling your growth story, this isn't just about telling the investors or potential investors, it may be, but it's also about the rest of the people in your team, in your business, maybe even yourself, that you've got to convince that this growth story is doable. You've set the targets at the most appropriate level. It's stretching, but not too stretching. And you're convinced that you can do it. So it's a really important thing to get this growth story right. And how we talk about the growth story is a bit simplistic, but we talk about head and heart. So when you're listening, or if I was listening to your growth story now about where you were going to take your business, I'd be evaluating it in my head. Do these numbers add up? Is it stretching enough? But also I'd be evaluating it in my heart. Do I think are you capable of doing this, executing this, achieving this level of growth? Have you ever done it before? What's my gut feeling? Head and heart. And obviously, anybody developing a growth story, it's one thing, it's got to be realistic and doable, but before you get anyone else to believe in it, you've got to believe in it yourself. Too often I see business leaders telling a growth story that they really, in their heart of hearts, don't even believe they can do themselves. So, head and heart. So that's how we're going to develop today's webinar. We've got about an hour, and what I'm going to do is split that time up into stuff and content and techniques around heart. So how you think about your growth story, what you believe about your growth story, and how to get that belief in it. What we'll also do is talk about dreams and how we motivate ourselves to aspire to that next level of growth story. What I'm also going to do, which may be interesting for some of you, some people will love it and some people might not love it, but in order to get us in the right state to create that vision for the next 3 years for your business, I'm also going to use a visioning experience, a visualization experience that'll last about 10 minutes. And what I'm going to try and do there is put you in a dream state so you can look at your business in 3 years' time, in the future, walk around it. And my aim there is to get you in the right emotional state such that when we move on to the head part in the second half, you can actually map out that vision that you experienced in your dream state. We'll get you to map that out, and that's a very left brain logical way of doing it. And then we'll actually look at, in order to get the granularity right, we'll look at a 3-year perspective of your growth story, and then a 12-month, a 1-year perspective, granularity on your growth story. So in that way, what I'm trying to do is bring together the heart and the head in synchronization. So we've got something that stands up to any questions that anybody may have, but also it's something that you really believe in and something that you want to happen and something you believe in. So let's kick off then. So we're talking about things, I guess, of the heart to start off with. So that's your feelings about your growth story and your thinking behind your growth story. So over the last few years, Winning Pitch, we've been working with not only high growth businesses, that's what we do, but also we've been working with a lot of elite sports coaches. And in some ways, there's quite a lot of parallels between very successful business people and very successful sports people. and particularly their coaching, and particularly the tools and techniques they both use that gives them the edge. Let's be honest, probably 90% of businesses in the UK don't grow at all. Only about 10% really grow. And only about 10% of athletes are getting towards that professional elite side of things. So they're obviously doing things differently to everybody else. So what can we learn from that? And I think a lot of that is down to how they think. What we know is that there's cause and effect. If you think about your growth story, let's say, one of the things you might want to think about that growth story is what turnover are you going to be doing, or what profitability, or what's your level of ambition for exporting? Some of those levels you might put in there. So I don't know, let's say for the sake of argument, you think that you might want to grow to a £10 million business, or a £50 million business, or a £100 million business. That number, that level that you pick on your turnover, is driven by how you think and your beliefs. It has ancestry. It's the effect. But what we even need to think about are the causes. What's caused you to think and put that number in your growth strategy? So what we talk about is cause and effect. And everything sort of starts in the mind, doesn't it? So, whether it's your business idea, whether it's the design of your car, everything starts in the mind at one stage or another. So if you think about your growth strategy and you pick, I don't know, for the sake of argument, let's say, for example, you say, well, in 3 years' time, I'm going to be a £10 million business. That is the effect. What's caused you to select that amount, that turnover? I would say the cause is, well, the results, any result is always caused by actions and behaviors, which are delivered through the body. But what causes us to pick and take actions and make decisions on growth? And for me, it's actually the mind. It goes back to the mind. Everything starts in the mind. And you have two parts to your mind. You have your conscious mind, which is your intellect, your awareness, your situational, the prefrontal lobe, if you like. And that's the bit that does the numbers, that does the logic. The unconscious mind is the second part. And in some ways, that's in some ways more powerful, because that drives your beliefs, most of which are unconscious. That drives your habits, the way you think about your business, what it could achieve, what its potential is, your gut feel. If I said to some people on the call today, I think you could be a £50 million business, how would you judge that statement? Well, you go into your unconscious mind and say, well, I reference that. Well, is that what I thought we could do? Have I ever done that? What are we doing at the moment? All that sort of an interesting belief system around what you can do and what you can't do drives your growth story. And you can see here that whilst I talked about head and heart, actually the heart part is the unconscious mind and the head part is more the conscious side of the mind. But how does it play out in growth story, this? So sometimes I'll be working with a business on their growth story and I'll say something like, so turnover at the moment is, say, £3 million. So what do you want to be in 3 years' time, for the sake of argument, on turnover? And they might say, oh, I don't know, well, 4 million. And we'll have that challenging conversation around, well, I thought you wanted to go high growth. Why not 5 million? Why not 10 million? Why not 100 million? It's worth noting that some of the VCs out there, some of the venture capitalists, they want a 5 or a 10 times return on their money. And marginal amounts of growth from their perspective are just not a game worth playing, to be honest. So we've got to be, if you're looking at VC funding, you need to be looking and growing a lot more than just fairly nominal amounts. And what I hear often when I'm challenging people on their growth story is, let's be realistic about who I am and what I'm capable of. I'm not Richard Branson. I'm just a chap who was brought up in Hull, for the sake of argument. When I hear those sort of beliefs, though, a belief is a feeling of certainty about something. It tells me something about that individual, though. It tells me that they don't think they're good enough. It tells me they don't think they're capable enough. In some ways, there's almost no point in doing sort of strategy work or going over the board with their business model until we've actually nailed this belief system, until I've changed that belief. Because if they honestly don't believe they can grow the business, then developing a growth story is going to be A, hard work, and B, even if we got it, it's not going to come across as believable. Or they'll give up halfway through because the belief system, their beliefs, are dragging them down. So I think there's an awful lot a lot of time we could spend on this whole area, but I think what's important for us all to know is that all our decisions around the growth story, how much growth we go for, where we grow, how we grow, they've all got ancestry, and they're all linked, a lot of them, to what the beliefs we think we're capable of as a leader or as a business person. After all, that's where the potential is. It's in you. Untapped potential is in you. That's what investors are investing in. And we talk about making the unconscious conscious, and we talk about the Carl Jung quote, which basically says, he said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will drive our lives and we will call it fate. And I think there is certainly something in that. So being very self-aware as a leader, what do you honestly believe about your potential? You personally, what potential do you think you've got? And what potential do you genuinely think your business has got? Some of those beliefs will really hamper the growth story, not only in its ambition, but also in its execution. I suppose the other point to mention here is I think what it can sometimes start with for me is a dream. And that seems like a very odd thing to say at a webinar like this on finance, but go with me on this. When Martin Luther King did his speech, his growth story, if you like, he didn't say, I have a smart objective. He didn't say, I have a spreadsheet. He said, I have a dream. Because he knew a dream is more motivational than a spreadsheet, than an objective, than a target. Dreams drive people to do bigger and better things. So as an example, when I was a little bit younger and my parents wanted me to pass my exams, they were desperate for me to pass my 11 plus. And I remember saying to them, yeah, well, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, passing my 11 plus, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. What I really want is a new bike. That was what I wanted. So what we did, we put them together. The dream for me was the new bike. I could dream about cycling out of my little village and going places, doing great stuff on my new bike, and people saying, oh, great bike, Steve. Oh, fantastic, loving it. The objectives and the targets in that sense were the exams. So whilst the objective and the target was pass the exams, the dream that motivated me to put in the hard work, to do the hard flogging hours, to do all those revising, etc. What motivated me to do that was the dream. And that's what Martin Luther King found. That's why he said, I have a dream, because dreams motivate. The other thing dreams can do is get you to places where you never thought you could be. They elevate you and unleash new powers. I remember the interview with Jessica Ennis when she won her gold medal. And the interviewer said to her, what did it feel like when you were stood there with the gold medal around your neck on the podium and the Grand National play and the national anthem playing? And she said, well, I did cry, but I've dreamt that moment hundreds of times. I've been there so many times that it wasn't so much of that's what I've dreamed of doing. That was the motivation. And in the same way with me, with my bicycle, it was her when she was having to practice all those different events, getting up very early in the morning when it's dark and doing the running and the weights and everything like that. That was the, and the personal best times and things like that. That was the target and the objectives. But the dream that motivated to do all those things was standing on the podium with the gold medal and the national anthem playing. Finally, some of you may remember Johnny Wilkinson, 1998, drop kicking a rugby ball to win England the World Cup in the last few minutes of the game. And again, in the interview afterwards, they said, oh, how lucky was that? There were just 2 minutes to go. Who'd have thought it? And Johnny Wilkinson and some of the other people in his team actually said, well, we thought it. In fact, again, hundreds of times, we've practiced that both physically. So 15 minutes to go, where do we need to be on the pitch? Where's the pack? Who puts the ball out to Johnny and does he kick it over? But also mentally, in our dreams, in our visions, we've had group visioning sessions of the last 15 minutes. So we need to get the ball to this particular person who's going to do this particular play, who then moves it up the field. And then with 2 minutes to go, we're going to be here on the pitch. It's going to go back to Johnny Wilkinson and he's going to kick it over. That was all visualized many, many, many times. And as Johnny Wilkinson said, practice makes perfect, even in the real world. So what's all this got to do with you? Well, first of all, I think dream. Dream about your business. Where are you taking it? You know, life's too short to have an average business. We want to take it big. We want to do great things with it. You know, you want the wealth, you want the financial freedom, you want all the great things that running a great business can give to you. That's why you started the business, I'm guessing. So we need to think about your dream, about your business, because that'll feed into your growth story. The second thing we need to do is, because we're going to do a visioning session after this, I want to put you in the right state, the right emotional, energized state to do the best vision you can of your business. So what I want you to do is put you in that state. And that's what we're going to do now through the visualization exercise. So for the next 10 minutes, what we will do is we'll go through this exercise. I want you to keep an open mind, but I want you to participate in it, because that way you'll get the most from it. What it'll do is help you visualize what your business, a very successful version of your business, looks like in 3 years' time. And you'll actually go in there and you'll actually look around and you'll get that feeling of what it's like. And what I want that to do is to drive you to write the best vision of and growth story of your business in the next part of this session. So if we're ready, back straight and sit in the chair, and let's go through the vision. So welcome to your business vision visualization experience. I'd like you to start off by trying to sit up straight and make sure your back is supported, ensuring your feet are set nice and squarely on the floor. You might want to place your hands flat down, resting on your legs. Just ensure you're in a quiet, safe space where you can clearly hear my voice, following me through this process as we visualize your successful business. We start off by focusing on the breathing. Start by finding a nice, deep breathing rhythm. Probably slightly deeper than you'd normally breathe, but not too deep to be forced. And as you do that, just allow your eyes to close if they've not done already. Settling into that nice, deep breathing rhythm. Breathing deeply in, pausing just for a second at the end of the in-breath, and then deeply out, pausing just for a second at the end of your out-breath. In and out. As you settle into that nice, deep breathing rhythm, allow yourself to relax. Allow your shoulders to drop and your muscles to relax. Allow yourself to unwind and listen to my voice. And as you breathe in and breathe out, start to place your focus on breathing in through your heart. Finding yourself almost physically breathing in through your heart. We know you can't actually do that. However, If you concentrate enough, you can almost feel every breathe in and out pass through your heart. Each breath in and each breath out through your heart, connecting your heart and your mind, allowing the two to come into sync, allowing the two to come into rhythm. It happens quite naturally as you continue to breathe through your heart, breathing in and pausing, and breathing out and pausing, settling into that nice deep breathing rhythm. Now that we've got you into this relaxed state and aligned your mind and your body, start to consider, what would your successful business look like? What would success look like for your business? Maybe you want to get your business to the next level, possibly bigger, possibly more profitable, but a level that you'd be happy with and more than satisfied with. Whatever that is, start to picture it now. Start to picture that moment where your business has achieved that level of success, say 3 years from now. I'd like you to picture that moment. You now effortlessly running a much bigger, more profitable business, and you are generally over the moon with it. Whatever success looks like for you and your business, see it now as if you were there in that business. See it now as if you've achieved all you wanted to achieve with your business. Now take it to the next stage. I want you to step into that business, step into your successful business. Start to see it through your own eyes. What do you see? What can you see people doing in your successful business? As you walk around your successful business, how much has it grown over the past few years? How many times bigger is it now? 5 times? 10 times? 100 times? What sort of sales turnover does your new successful business now have 3 years from today? As you look around your business, consider how many people your business now employs. Where do you have your offices? The same place or new places across the UK or maybe across the world? What are the biggest changes you've made to customers? Maybe new products or new services? If there's something going on around you, hear everything with your own ears. Maybe people congratulating you on your success. Or maybe there's just the sound of your business purring away, making customers happy and making you more profitable. Start to feel the emotions that are building and bubbling away inside you. The joy and happiness of achievement, of that significance of what you and your team have achieved. Walk further into your business now so you're clearly there. And just turn up the brightness and the colours that you can see so it's clear and vivid. Clearly notice specific noises that are going on around you, such that you can hear them at full volume now. Clearly hear those noises that confirm this is a business that is performing well, like a well-oiled machine. Take a few moments to have a good look around your successful business, knowing that your business is exactly where you wanted it to be 3 years on. You set your goals and your financial targets, and today you've achieved it. How does that make you feel right now? Take a few minutes to wander around your business. See everything and everyone that is around you. Hear everything that's going on. Catch snippets of other people's positive conversations about you and the business. Start to feel the joy and happiness that this achievement brings you as it fills your heart with love. You and the business have achieved everything that you wanted to. You have succeeded in both your business life and, importantly, your personal life as well. Let that emotion flow over you. Let the happiness and joy emanate from your heart and flood throughout your body. Allow it to wash over your body completely, circulating out from your heart and flowing around your body. Feel it from the very tips of your fingers out to the tips of your toes. Allow the tingling sensations of joy, of happiness and of achievement run down your legs and up through your arms. Up your spine and up your neck and up into your head. And I'd now like you to feel that contented smile that's getting bigger and bigger on your face right now. Give yourself total permission to understand and to be happy for the fact that you have achieved and got this business to where you wanted it to be. Now that you are there, it's time to feel grateful for everything and everyone that has helped you to get there, and for everything that you have now in your life. Be grateful for what you have now achieved with your business. Be grateful for seeing the opportunity that was out there and doing something about it. Be grateful for some of the smallest things you have in your life right now. And be grateful for some of the bigger things that are still to come. Allow that gratitude to wash over you. Allow that joy, love and peacefulness to stay with you throughout today and throughout your life. And know you built the business of your dreams. Know that it is with you right now. You have achieved it. You have made it through. Be happy. Be joyful and be grateful for everything you currently have, plus everything else that life is going to offer you. Be grateful that you are you. So when it feels right for you over the next, say, 10 seconds, just gently reopen your eyes and come back into the room feeling refreshed and alive. Okay, So how does everybody feel about that then? What I wanted to do, what I wanted to try and do is, I know some people are uncomfortable doing these sort of visualization sessions, and I know some people really love it. And there's probably some people in the middle who are not quite sure what's just happened. But what I do know is that really high performers in business, and particularly elite sports people, many of them carry out these sort of visualization techniques. And it can't be a coincidence that they're the ones that are winning the medals and getting the personal bests and being most successful. So I really want to think about that in terms of that. And what I hope also is that the growth story, I'm not sure what state your growth story was when you started this webinar, but for some of you it might be reasonably well developed. And for some, it might not even have existed. But I'm hoping now that in terms of your own growth story, it's got more color. It's probably got more passion, maybe more emotion in it, and maybe you have more desire to make it happen at the right sort of level of ambition. So that's where we're at there. So what I'd like to do now is, maybe if you've got any questions on that session, pop it in the chat box. If you've got any comments, did it work for you? Did it not work for you so well? Have you done anything similar before? Feedback some comments for me in the chat room, and let's just see what people are saying out there. I'll ask Danielle in a few minutes' time to sort of report on those. Any questions or any chats? Before we move on to the sort of second part of the webinar. So that was, the first part was about how we think. It was about the heart. It was about emotions. It was about desire. What we're going to move on to now, and for some of you this might be a light relief, is the head stuff, is the logic stuff, is the granularity stuff. So you've got a growth story, but we talked earlier about the fact not only has it got to be, you've got to be committed to it, we've got to have confidence that someone's going to do it, but it's also have that clarity. So how do we get that sort of clarity? So what we're going to talk about is, we're going to talk about it from two perspectives. One, I'm going to give you granularity around a 3-year vision, 3-year growth story, if you like. And then we'll move on to a technique for capturing the next 12 months. So a 1-year growth story. That's how we're going to do it. So we'll play it from there. Danielle, was there any questions or comments came from the first session?
No, nothing so far.
Okay, good. Hope people are asleep and they haven't sort of drifted off in terms of some meditative. Okay then, so let's move on to this session then. So working on the logic and granularity of your 3-year growth vision. So the logic we use here is really based on this famous little exercise and quiz for children, which is, which rod catches the fish? Now, if you have the same handicap that I've got, which is a marketing and strategy degree, you start off with rod number A and you go, oh, is that it? No. Then you try B, and is that it? No. Well, then you try C, no, is that it? The engineers in the audience will be sat there shouting out, start with a fish. Start with a fish and work backwards. That's the fastest way to do this puzzle. And it's the same, some of you may be familiar with Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits. When creating a vision or when creating a story about your growth, start with a destination in mind and then work back from that. Then you've got a better chance of hitting it. So start with a fish and work backwards is the sort of, I guess, the underlying principle that we use for what we call our orbit diagram. So I'll talk you through a worked example here I've changed the name, but in essence it was an example that I worked with a cake making business, and they wanted to look at a growth story. So they came to me and said, Steve, we want to grow the business. So I said, okay, let's develop the growth story. Let's develop the vision for the next 3 years. How much do you want to grow? Well, quite a lot. Okay. How much is quite a lot? Let's get some numbers on it. And also, let's also challenge each other as to why you've picked that number you came up with in the first place. So we use the visioning orbit. And as you can see, the visioning orbit, a bit like a dartboard, it is in essence 4 concentric circles. And then the inner circle is the current year. And that's where we'll write data for the current year. The circle outside of that is for the next year. So next year. So in this case, it was 2018 and 19 was the next year. The next circle after that is the year after that. So in this case, 1920. And the circle on the outside is the 3-year one, which is in this case, 2021. So concentric circles, and what we can do is actually look at those circles denoting the different years of growth. What we also have are lines that come out of that, they're the spokes. And this allows us to actually, in the same way that a dartboard has numbers around the edges, what we're going to have are ways of describing your growth story, your vision. So with this organization, they said, well, where do you start? So I said, okay, well, describe this growth to me. And they were, well, could be this, could be that. So look, just tell me what your turnover is now and tell me what you want your turnover to be in 3 years' time. Let's start with turnover. So they said, okay. So at the moment it's 0.5 million. And after some discussion, going back to belief systems, they wanted it to be, maybe at one stage it was going to be 2 million was their 3-year turnover figure. And then I was suggesting it should be more like 10, challenging them on their beliefs as to why they weren't really going for it. Long story short, we ended up with about 4 million that felt right for this particular draft. So the 4 million went in the outermost circle and 0.5 million went in the innermost, and we put turnover, we wrote turnover as a spoke label. And then we said, okay, so if in 3 years' time we're going to be doing 4 million turnover, what does that need to be in year 2, in 2 years' time, to be on the right run rate? So they suggested about 2 million, okay? So I said, well, if you're going to do 2 million in 2 years' time, what should the target be for next year to get on the right run rate for 2 million? And they said, well, about 1 million. So more through luck than actual strategy, you can see that they're actually doubling their turnover every year. But that doesn't have to be, it was just the way that these numbers worked out. So that was turnover. And it's always the easiest place to start. It's not the only place to start, but I find it's the quickest and the easiest for draft number 1. So we got turnover. Next thing that was really important to these guys was profitability. They were aware they weren't as profitable as they should be and things would need to change. So I said, okay, on £4 million turnover then in 3 years, let's talk about profitability. So tell me in 3 years' time what profit you'd like to be making on that 4 million. So again, we had some discussions and some challenges around that, but in the end, they agreed on 480,000 on a 4 million turnover. Note they were doing 40k on a £500,000 turnover. So we said, okay, on 480k in year 3, what does that need to be in year 2? So again, after some discussion, 200k, okay? And year 1, about 80k, okay. So we got profit and turnover. Then what I asked them to do was start to describe their business. So we know it's a £4 million business making 480k profit, but describe what it looks like in 3 years' time over and above turnover and profit. So what would stop them from, what are the barriers, what are the challenges? So the first thing that came was new factory, and the fact that when I challenged them, I said, well, how many cakes would you have to be producing to do £4 million turnover? And again, that's a sort of question that unlocks a number of other thoughts about how is this even possible? Can we do it, etc. So they worked out about 2.5 million cakes or 2.5 million units they'd have to do in year 3 to do about 480k profit and 4 million turnover. At the moment, they were only doing 500,000 units. So again, we worked that back. 2.3 million units in year 3 became 1.2 in year 2 and 900 in year 1, working back from the fish. We also noted that we probably needed a new factory in year 1 to get us on that run rate. So we're already starting to look at things that need to happen in order to make this a reality. We're on a funding program, and this is a funding webinar. So what was interesting here was I was saying, well, what would stop us from actually getting that new factory and that operational capacity? And they said, well, we need some more funding into the business if we're going to do that. Okay, so when would that funding need to go in order to deliver this vision? So they said, well, we probably need about 200,000 factory fit out in year 1 and maybe 300k of asset finance in year 2. Okay, so we wrote those in. And then what we did was you took other areas, other things that needs to change, how this business needs to change and grow. So level of automation, what's the story there? In order, and that the reason why that was important was because we needed a better level of automation, because the profit figures needed to be much improved on what they were at the moment. How they buy ingredients, distribution. We've got a much bigger factory now. We're doing a lot more units of cakes. What does the distribution look like now? So in year 3, it was going to need 3 employees actually doing the distribution now. People are always important to a growth story or a vision. And often, in order to make big leaps in growth, businesses do need to make key appointments. And often, sometimes, VCs and investors may even impose the fact that they want to see perhaps a new financial controller or a new business development director. With this organization, clearly they were saying, well, in order to deliver this new levels of turnover and profit, they were going to need a new marketing director. And year 1, they certainly made a big thing about the new production manager who was going to do the factory fit out. So we've got a plan here that's starting to come together, that's starting to look more realistic. Number of employees is an interesting question to ask yourself as well. So if we're doing 4 million and we're doing 2.5 million cakes, then how many more employees do we need, or how many employees do we need to drive this business forward then? Where will they all sit? So you can see there that we worked back the number of employees. Marketing and sales was the biggest change, to be honest, for this business, because they were poor, I'll be honest with you, in terms of marketing and sales. And in order to generate that amount of turnover, clearly things were going to have to be done differently. So there's a story there behind how the marketing and sales strategies would evolve. Part of that was their marquee customers. So these are the customers that are really impressive, that other people find impressive, that will attract more businesses. So for them, they were going to say, well, by year 3, to drive that sort of turnover, we're going to be needing companies like Marriott Hotels, a national contract. So year 2, how do we get on that run rate? Well, maybe that's a regional hotel chain we can get into bed with. Year 1, maybe it's a 5-star hotel. But that's the sort of marquee customers we'll be doing that will help us get that turnover. So it's all starting to pull together. The other thing they had to look at in this particular case was the types of customers and the blend of business. So what sectors are you in? If we're going to drive that 480k profit figure, that might mean that we have to go in certain sectors or certain blend of business customers compared to what we've got now. So for them, it was the balance of regular sort of event-based food and cakes versus the regular selling of that. We could have put other things on there, but each vision is different. Each set of orbits, each set of bespoke labels are different for each company. So what you've got to do is pick one that's right for you. But as you can see on that particular page there, as a first draft, that was the first draft we went with, that they were going to take apart, because it's all interrelated. They were going to challenge it themselves, and I was going to do more challenging of it. We're going to pull together such that we ended up with, on one page, a 3-year roadmap of where this business was going to go and how it was going to do it. And it was going to be robust enough so that even the smartest of investors would say, oh yeah, but what you haven't thought about is X. And we say, oh no, we have thought about that. That's why we've got these marquee customers here. Or when a smart investor who says, well, how are you going to make the capital expenditure on this? Oh, that's why we need the funding. So we've answered all the questions already on one page. Tremendous growth story. So enough talking about that example. Let's give yourself the opportunity to live this. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can, get yourself a sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, get yourself a pen. And what I'd like to do is draw for me the circles. Give yourself enough space so you can get some spoke labels around the edges, but draw in some circles. So we end up with maybe, let's say, 4 concentric circles like that. And then from that, you can draw yourself some spokes out. Just quickly, just draft those out. Doesn't matter how many you've got for now. We're not going to be able to complete the whole thing in today's session. So where are we at now then? So we've got this sort of drafted out, 4 concentric circles with some spokes. So let's just quickly try this out and get you started with this technique. So your growth story, your business, the one that you were in the dream, not 10 minutes ago. What turnover did it have in 3 years' time? What is your turnover? So maybe just draft in terms of, we can write in the current year, year plus 1, year plus 2, year plus 3. Let's just think about turnover. So maybe write turnover on the outside of the circle. And then on the innermost circle, part of that, what's your current turnover now? And just write that in. And then year 3, on the outer ring, what turnover in your growth story at the moment? How many million? And just be conscious of why you've picked that figure. Could it be more? Could your potential be more? So we've got a year 3 turnover and we've got a current year. And then what you want to do is then just chunk that back. So if you've got a certain amount in for year 3, then what does that need to be for year 2? What's the run rate it needs to be at in year 2 to make year 3 possible? And then year 1, what does it need to be in year 1 to make that possible? So then we've completed, if you like, a slice of cheese for the turnover. If we've done that, what we can do then is profitability. So again, thinking about your business in 3 years' time, what do you want the profitability to be on that turnover that you've written? How much profit do you want to make? As we've said, if we're looking at funding and things like that and investment, that needs to be a pretty good return. Maybe, I don't know, depends on the industry, but I'd like to see sort of maybe 10%, 15, 20%, in some cases, 30% profit. What would you think it should be? So let's just put that figure there in terms of profitability in year 3, and put your current year 1 in the middle of the innermost one, the profitability, and then work it back. So for example, what is it in year 3, in year 2, in year 1, and today? The final one, and we haven't got time to complete all of this today, but I just wanted to get you thinking and get you started with it, is think about the new products or new services that your business is now offering in year 3, such that it can generate that level of turnover and that level of profitability. My guess is that it's going to be a different level of innovation than possibly the version that you're delivering now. So what new products are you offering in year 3, or what new services? Maybe if you're a professional service-based business or services-based business, what digital platform might you have attached or part of your business now that you didn't have maybe in this current year? So write those in terms of year 3, and then chunk that back. So if that's product version C in year 3, then product version B in year 2, and maybe product A in year 1. We can butt those in, and then what you can do is carry on. And what I'll leave for you there is maybe some other titles that you might want to put in. You might want to write into your vision. Maybe new routes to market, number of employees. Maybe for some of you, it might even be your role in the business. At the moment, you're probably working all hours that God sends. But in year 3, you might be saying, well, in year 3, that's my time when I actually want to partially exit the business. So maybe you're only working 2 days a week then, rather than the 9 days a week you're working at the moment. So that's an important part there. So you've got some examples there of other spoke labels you could use. Maybe jot some of those down for use later. But I just want to give you a flavour of how we do it. So ultimately what you'll end up with is that sort of picture of the business. Okay, so what do we think about the orbit diagram? Have you done it before? Do you think that could be useful? being able to present on one page that 3-year growth strategy, not only just of turnover and profit, but how you're going to do it. It's a really powerful tool, we find. What's your view? And has anybody got any questions about what spoke labels they think might or might not be right for them? I'm willing to take those on either now or at the end of today's webinar. So any questions or comments? So Danielle, do we have any comments at this stage or questions? No?
Hold on, we've got one. Just 1 second. Oh, Jeremy Bond says that the Orbit's a very good tool to think about growth.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, Jeremy, totally agree. It's a very powerful tool. And I think what it allows you to do is get you that 3 level, sort of year 3 level of granularity. Very powerful. Hopefully with that combined with the dream session that we did, the visualization, you know, it also builds in a lot more passion and emotion and real desire to make it happen as well. So we talked about head and heart, and we talked about the sort of heart and the emotion and the thinking side, the dreaming side. And we talked about head. And what we've gone at is really a 3-year level of granularity, if you like, to get that level of clarity. Now what we're going to move to is a 1-year level, 1-year growth plan, a 1-year level of granularity, if you like. So how does that work? So if we're trying to present that level of the story, what we need to do is really prioritize and focus. What are the vital few objectives or vital few breakthroughs you need to do this year to get on the right run rate for that vision and that orbit? And these have to be at the right level. So these aren't about sort of, oh, well, you know, I need to sit down and speak to Bob about the invoicing. These are high level strategic things that you're going to do, you're going to lead, and your business is going to achieve such that it makes those big leaps towards that vision. And again, I use the word vital few, not trivial many. So what I'm looking at generally is about 3 big things you're going to do this year to get you on track. And those 3 things could come from any number of scale up sort of challenges, if you like. So I think it could come from somewhere around something to do with winning new customers in new markets to give you that boost of turnover. It could be something to do with process improvement, maybe ramping up your operations. Is it something to do with that? There might be something in there about people or structure in your business, taking on more people, some key appointments, or it might even be to do with investment. And obviously we're here today talking about investment, so it could be definitely be that. But finance, those sort of areas there. So when some businesses grow, it's worthwhile remembering that you know, even when some businesses, it depends on the business model, but when some businesses grow even by 30%, sometimes, depending on the industry, that could actually double the level of capital expenditure you need to cash that growth. So the finance side, the investment side is an important part of it. What I've done for you today is actually pick up and looked at a number of growth plans, 1-year growth plans that I've done with my high growth businesses under those topics. So you can see here under the first one, maybe to get you and your business and your growth strategy for the next 12 months, maybe what you need is a big increase in sales from a new market segment or a sales from existing customers. It never ceases to amaze me that the easiest place to grow a business is with existing customers. And most of us, probably our company included, aren't particularly great at really mining those existing customers as much as we should. But it might be a new product, or it might be even sales breakthroughs for exporting. So maybe one of those might be right for you. Or maybe it's one of the process improvement ones. So this could be to do with maybe a real big breakthrough in some operations, some sort of capacity building thing, or it might be a cost reduction thing, or it might be a significant new technology. On the people side, the breakthroughs for this year for your business might be to do with maybe appointing a real senior heavy hitter. It might be about introducing performance management, so we get more from our existing employees and our production and our delivery. It might be restructuring, or it might even be about introduction of a major training program or something like that. And finally, on the investment, as we've said, it could be about actually you need investment for a business, for your business to really make the growth. For some people in certain organizations, you will need that investment in order to grow as fast as you want to. In other businesses that are on the call today, they may not need some massive investment. But it could be a new joint venture, or it could be a change in share ownership. So you can see with this particular business I did this with, they put the marks on the exporting, the breakthrough in operations and investment. And those were the three that they went for. But just reflect on those breakthroughs that you can see there. Which ones do you think would be right for you? Because this is a sort of level that we need to be pitching these at, these breakthroughs. Not too high, not too woolly, but also certainly not too low level. So pick out maybe some of those that might be relevant for you for this year, for your growth story for this year. One of the biggest criticisms investors make of business plans is that there's too many goals, and also there's a lot of talk about what they're going to do, lots of targets, lots of objectives, but very little detail on how that's going to happen. And ultimately, you know, that's what's going to make the difference a lot of the time in their decision about whether they fund your business or not. I mean, it's a fairly well-known phrase, certainly I've heard it said many a time by investors that say, I'd much rather have a grade B, I'd much rather have a grade A team with a grade B plan than a grade A plan with a grade B team. And it's back to that issue about people invest in people, not businesses. Anybody can have a great idea, but not everybody can implement that business and commercialize it. So you need the what's, but you also need the how's to convince people they can do it. When we have what's and how's, what we also need to think about is we need a small number of them, as we've said, the vital few, maybe many, maybe no more than 3. And for each of those, we need to think about, well, if that's the what are the hows that are going to drive that? And also, how do we make sure that they're operating at the right levels? So we talk about making things measurable by having a start line, a finish line, and a deadline. So from this to that by this date. So from 10 million to 20 million by March. Start line, finish line, deadline on both our what's and often on the hows that are related to them, so we know they're performing at the right run rate. So let's go back to Fancy Cakes, the cake manufacturer. So they had their vision, and from that, the next session we did from that, after we challenged them and really kicked around that sort of orbit diagram, very powerful for them, what we wanted to do then was to go their next 1 year granularity growth story. So for them, we talked about the vital few, not the trivial many. And they said, okay, so what they wanted, their 3 what's were increased sales to hotel chains from 100K to 350K by December, increased production capacity from 500 to 900 by February, raise 200K investment from external sources by September. Those are the 3 big what's they needed to do this year to get them on that trajectory. Those are the what's. Again, vital few. What were the hows? So for them, in terms of their sales, they needed a new digital marketing strategy. They needed a new cupcake wedding range for the large hotel chains. And they needed a run rate of appointment generation that would give them that gap, 250K, that they're going to have to close there. So 4 appointments every month with hotel catering managers for Sue. Those are the hows to that what. What about production capacity? Okay. So they recognized they needed to locate and move to a new factory. They needed to negotiate bigger and more effective contracts. And they needed to recruit a production manager. What's and how's. All aligned to the right level of performance gap. Raise 200K. So they needed to recruit a stronger management team. And they needed a more robust business plan. And they needed to appoint a corporate finance advisor. What's and how's. So what we did was work with them on that, and then we put them into our single page planning format. So this is the format, and you can see we've got the what's on the left-hand side, the how's across the top, and the targets along the bottom. And we got some names for those projects when we popped them in. So the what's, well, we've already agreed those, so we've already showed those. So those are the what's. And what we did with the hows was we just laid them across 90 degrees across the top. So you can see these were the hows for the first what, about increasing sales. These were the hows for the increased production. And these were the hows for raising 200K. And what you can see there is we've put in at the intersection a star. And that star denotes that that how is a key direct driver of that what, because those are the ones they were selected for. Why that's important is that some of the how projects going along the top actually impact on some of the other what's that they weren't necessarily chosen for. Now, sometimes they might be a direct driver as well as the one they had. Sometimes they might be an indirect driver, so they influence it, but not very much. And sometimes there's no relationship, in which case we leave it blank. So you can see here that in the middle of this plan, we have Mike locate and move into new, larger factory premises. Now you'll recall that that actually was as a how was originally chosen for number 2, increased production capacity. But what we know is that it's also a key driver of increasing sales and also raising 200K. So that's a really important one. So we're able to see which of these hows are more important than others. And also, importantly, who's got the most important hows. And you can see from this, or any investor would see from this, certainly straight away, that Mike has got the 2 most important hows because they've got all the stars in there. If Mike got knocked down by a bus or was struggling to make it or whatever it happened, that they're going to, if they fail, they're going to impact across all 3 of the what's. So we might need to think about whether Mike is the right person to do both of those. Is there anybody else that can support him? Below that, we put in the targets, and the targets are what we talked about on the previous slide, so they've not changed. So what you can see there on one page is a 1 year what's and how's plan for the business. 1 year growth story with real clarity, with real, I guess, alignment as well. Along the bottom, what we can also do is to put in red, amber, greens as well. So every month we can evaluate this plan. So if an investor wanted to see this plan, what we do is we allocate a color to it. So if it's green, it means it's on target or doing very well, performing well. If it's amber, then generally speaking, it's there or thereabouts. If it's red, as you can see, we've got a red one in towards the right-hand side of the plan. That means it's off target. So that needs to be focused on, brought, targeted, focused on, and brought back up to speed. So it's Mike's recruit, developing, high-performing exec management team that needs some work on it. But we can show then that this is a plan that's broadly speaking on target for investors and for the rest of the team. It's a good thing to see. So that's our 1 year plan. Again, very, very powerful, very, very clear. Remember, one of the first things we said about the plan, we need clarity. It's a very clear way of seeing what's and how's and where we're at in terms of performance of that plan. So what we'll send you guys is a copy of that template. So you can think about, if you've already selected maybe some of the what's that you've saw earlier, you can start to think about putting those in. Maybe think about the sort of start line, finish line, deadline. So, from what to what, by when. And maybe some of the hows that are going to drive it and some of the targets. And you can start to pull together your own single page plan, your own 12-month growth story. The other thing about this is what it develops is what they call line of sight. So for the sake of argument, if I'm the MD of this business, I might have 3 vital few. And for the sake of argument, I might have somebody on my team called Danielle. And I might give Danielle, let's say, those 3 purpley coloured hows there. So that's on my plan. But on Danielle's plan, they become her what's. And she might have somebody in her team, let's say, called Carla. And Carla's got their slightly lighter bluer versions. And she's on that team. And they become Carla's what's. And she's got her own hows. the beauty of this is that if you can get this level of alignment, is that if everybody in the team, the employees, do their job to their single page plan, and the team leaders do their job, then actually, as the MD, your plan will happen by definition, if it's aligned right and the performance gaps are correct. So you've deployed that down, and this is the line of sight, a very powerful thing. And again, investors, what investors like to see, particularly big investors want to see, is that everybody in the business knows what the strategy is and they know what role they play in it. And this is this in a very, very powerful way. That's everybody's aligned to the strategy. So, crikey, where have we been? So we've done a lot in this hour, an hour and a quarter that we've been on. We've talked about the fact that a real growth story needs clarity, confidence, and conviction. But also what I'm saying is that your growth story, if you're, whatever stage you're at, whether you're just starting off with developing a growth story, or whether you've got one that you maybe need to take to the next level, it needs head and heart. It needs to have that level of granularity in there so that everything that's interrelated connects up. But also it needs real passion. It needs real emotion in there as well. And you need to really believe it and really take your business to the next level. You know, and I think if you can do that, then from me, what you're getting is you're turning what might have first of all started off a bit of an impossible story, but very powerfully, you've turned that into an inevitable success through the power of your growth story. Okay, so that completes the webinar content part for today. What I'd like to do is open it up for any comments. I'd like to open it up for any questions that you've got. Is there any particular tool or technique that you've seen today that you'd want to apply and how you might apply it with your business? Is there any comments about how you think it could work for you, this? And have you got something from today? Because I'm really, really passionate about making sure that you guys get the most out of sessions like today. You know, giving up an hour and a bit of your time, and that's really powerful. So any questions or any comments? Danielle, anything coming through on the wire, as it were?
No, nothing yet.
Nothing. Okay. So we'll see if any of those come through. What it allow me to do is to talk a little bit about the fact of where we go from here. So if you've liked what you've heard today, then obviously, you know, what you want to do is talk to maybe your account manager or your growth manager at the Humber Lep. Get in touch with them to see what else they can do and see what else they can support you with. There is time available there to do that, and there's expert mentoring and more webinars that are available there. We've got some more events coming up. I know I'm involved in delivering these, so if you like my delivery style, then maybe check these out. So Compelling Growth Move is when we talk about how you pivot your business. I'll be talking about some different tools and techniques there. And we'll talk about my mindset a bit more on the 24th. And then finally, execution. On the 1st of October, I'll be delivering that one. I'll be looking at, you know, as I said, strategy's fine, but ultimately, the thing that's going to make the big difference is execution. And that bridges the strategic intent and makes that an operational reality. So any more questions or comments, Danielle, or can we make
it? We've got one from Catherine. She says, 3 years is great, but why not 5 years?
Good question. Yeah, it's a good question. So for some organizations, they do like a 5-year orbit. It's completely up to you. You know, I think what you want to do is be able to be in a position whereby to pick the horizon that's right for you. So some people pick, let's say, a 5-year or 4-year horizon for their orbit because sometimes that's their exit. So they've already made a decision that they're maybe exiting or partially exiting the business in, let's say, 5 years' time. So they write the orbit around that sort of horizon. Other people, other organizations have things going on in their industry or their market that make maybe a 4-year or 5-year horizon a better way of doing it. So for example, if it was linked to some big change in legislation or something like that, it can make sense to do a 5-year orbit to align to that. I find that some of my clients struggle to go 5 years out. Sometimes 3 is more manageable. And also it gives you enough time to do great things in 3 years. 5 years, yeah, you could do even, hopefully be even better things. But certainly 2 years or 1 year, it's too short. Yeah, you can't, I don't think you can create as much difference there. Whereas in 3 years, you can really take a business stratospheric, and 5 years even more. So yeah, it's whatever works for you really is the honest answer to that. 3 years was just the example I provided today. Any other comments or any other questions out of today?
No.
No, we're fine. Okay. So it's 20 past 3. So from my point of view, I'd just like to say thanks for attending. We've covered an awful lot today in quite a short period of time, so I really appreciate you staying with us there. But what I would say is, really try and apply some of the things that you've learned today. They are very powerful, proven tools. And as I say, I think it can really help you take that dream into a real sort of successful business and attract that funding that you need. Okay, so if there's nothing else, no other comments or no other questions, I'd like to say thanks again for attending. We'll be sending out some forms in terms of evaluation forms and attendance forms. If you can complete them and return them, that would be brilliant. And hopefully I'll see you at one of our future webinars. So thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.